Uh, Amazing, thank you, Anna. So welcome everyone. So I'm Steve, or Steve Sampson-Jones, and I'm a delivery principal at MadeTech. So here's my sort of Lego CV, I guess. So I'm currently a delivery principal at MadeTech, where I work with the Met Office on their mobile apps and website, which is good fun. I've just started building up their defence clientele to get to work with lots of fun and interesting intelligence agencies. Before that, I think there's some Universal creditors on the call, so it's nice to see. I think I saw Nina a minute ago. So before that, during the pandemic, where I started to try and experiment with remote design sprints, I was working with Universal Credit and Kickstart. Prior to that, I was in a delivery role on the Blue Badge service and electronic charge points. I've also been at GDS, Cabinet Office, Warm Home Discount at Ofgem, Modge, and Parliament. So yeah, I like to refer to myself as almost like a certified scandal magnet rather than Scrum Master. So I get to work with lots of cool, interesting government services, which kind of goes hand in hand with MadeTech and our work supporting the public sector. So yeah, you're in the right place if you're here to learn about remote design sprints today. So like I said, I've been experimenting for like 2-3 years now, and there's a lot of tips and tricks I'd like to share with you all. Just a quick note that I'm a hugely big advocate of visual thinking and design. So there's a lot of visuals and images, and I'm going to share these slides at the end. They've got alt text and yeah, so hopefully you can process this information pretty well. And just a bit of housekeeping, I guess, if there's any questions, if you could just use the chat, and I'll take a quick Q&A at the end. And I'm hoping to circle back in to get you doodling along with me. So if you've got pen and paper to hand, that would be awesome and wouldn't be out of place. So yeah, without further ado, so for those that are unfamiliar with design sprints, there's a few different tweaks and ways of working that I've kind of altered to enable them from a more remote setting. So I don't know if anyone's read the Google Design Ventures book by Jake Knapp. So that's normally like the Bible of design sprint guidance. It doesn't quite work as well in a remote setting, like to cram 5 days worth of workshops in, staring at a Zoom call like you're doing now. You're going to get very heavy meeting fatigue, and you're going to lose all of those benefits around rapid iteration, keeping teams nice and lean, keeping people energetic and collaborative to try and get nice user-centric prototypes in front of users quickly. So like the way that I've done it on this is I try to squeeze some of the content into 4 days rather than across 5, and there's a lot of preparation that can happen that enables remote design sprints to work. So this is kind of like the rough agenda of day 1. So in the morning, so I normally have a morning session for about 2.5 hours and an afternoon one. So it gives people lots of different time to break and interact. And yeah, rather than it being a 9 o'clock to 5 o'clock thing, where people are absolutely out on their feet by the end of the day, it gives people an opportunity to recharge in between and attack Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday in the same manner they turn up on day 1. So I think that's my main tip, is if you're going to do it, just block and pencil time in the morning and again in the afternoon. And it still follows the same traditional format in that you'd kick off with Ask the Expert, like generating how might we's, mapping your processes, defining the sprint goal, and then you get all the fun stuff where you get to draw in the afternoon session. So the key thing to kind of start off with, and I guess like probably one of the things that's worked really well for me is that you wouldn't just kick off with a how might we statement. So a lot of the hard work in a design sprint, or especially a remote one, takes place probably the week prior. So ideally your user-centric design capabilities, or whether you've got delivery managers, you'd be lining up the right stakeholders to address a sprint problem or a problem area that you've kind of already got earmarked for your remote design sprint. So when I say that, I mean getting any subject matter experts, maybe there's some policy people, maybe operations. And essentially what you'd like to do here is start the session by getting them to introduce themselves and moderating a quick 5-minute Q&A session where they can talk about their experience in the particular policy area or some of the sort of problems that maybe some of their users have. And then a really good way of having this set up is using a Miro board or a mural or a Jamboard, whatever your virtual whiteboard is. And I've got a few examples to show you later. And anything that comes up as an opportunity or a challenge, I encourage the team to write how might we statements. So that you're not solutionizing, and it's in terms of, well, what's the impact, who's it for, and what's the result or outcome we'd like to see with those opportunities or challenges. But if you can get that right, and you can get your stakeholders and the right people lined up the week before, so that you can hit day one with this as the opening sort of exercise, yeah, it's going to set you up to succeed. So again, once you've affinity sorted all your how might we, so I'm going to show you my example board in a minute. So one of the ways in which I can cram a lot of content into 4 days over 5 days is doing the preparation beforehand. So if I was doing something in person, you probably want to get a load of post-it notes and start mapping your service or your feature, like from end to end, and creating a high level sort of as is process map or service map, whatever the terminology is within your organizations. But the way that you can save a bit of time and save people's meeting fatigue is doing this before. You can do it on the day, it just depends on the setup, but I like to do it the week before, working with my service designer, mapping the problem out, getting our product managers to talk about that. And then what the key thing is, why this goes hand in hand with the how might we's and Ask the Experts, is plotting your opportunities on the service map. So you can see there's a big cluster around applies for a job in this example from the Met Office that I run recently. And like I said, we've only got 4 days to prototype and test something. You probably ain't going to be able to do that for an end-to-end service, especially in government for those that work there. So I think by enabling the team and the participants to cluster around a particular area, there's a special role in a design sprint called a decider. So it's normally your product manager, service owner, where they can then say, okay, this is the biggest cluster, this is where I want to focus our efforts. So it's really key. I think it's one of those prepare to fail, fail to prepare sort of examples. So yeah, getting your how might we's and clustering them really sets you up in the morning. And I kind of alluded to this a little bit in remote design sprints. It's going to be quite intense. Like I've only been talking to you for about 10 minutes, staring at a screen. So I like to mix up the intensity levels. So something for those that have done more in-person stuff or by the book, there's an exercise called lightning demos. And I find that it just follows that sort of intense burst of quick user research and process mapping. And it just changes the facilitation intensity. As this example you can see from the Met Office, I literally just encourage people to be able to draw inspiration from maybe somewhere else in government. Maybe there's some open source code we can use. Maybe there's a competitor or a comparator. So from Met Office, for instance, we've got BBC, AccuWeather, a really nice UX app called Carrot, or maybe your native iOS. So like, what are they doing? How can we draw inspiration from them? The recent one I've been working on is around careers sites. So being able to look at Hack a Job and being like, here's what they do really well. And maybe we can follow suit or draw inspiration from them. So it's just a nice Google search or providing people just with that sort of like more of an easy task rather than being full on from the get-go. And that normally concludes the morning session where you've got a good idea of where we want to get to. We've mapped the service, we've decided the sprint goal, and we've got a load of problem statements we want to focus on. And this is the bit, normally when we break for lunch, we come back, and for those that follow me on LinkedIn or work me in the past, they know I do a lot of drawing. And it's probably why I like talking about design sprints so much, is that it really enables me to be creative and the team to be creative. So visual thinking is hugely influential in remote design sprints, or even physical ones for that matter. You don't have to be an artist, you don't have to be a sketchnoter, you literally just need a pen and a paper. And I'm going to get you to do some visual thinking exercises later in this webinar as well. But the reason why it's important is because we're going to be doing paper prototyping very shortly. You want people to be creative and collaborative and being able to remember stuff. So there's a couple of little icebreakers and energizers I like to use. And I'm going to circle back to these so you can actually try them firsthand. If you want to get ahead, this is one of my favorite ones called 30 circles. Like you can draw different shapes, but I like the circle element. And we're going to do this right at the end once I've kind of finished with my slides. So I encourage people to literally just draw circles or basic shapes on their sheet of paper. And you can do this now, but we're going to tackle it at the end. And the challenge here is then converting those circles into a different image or icons. You can see on the bottom left, I've got apples, donuts, cricket balls, bombs, balloons. And the reason why 30 circles is good, you start to run out of steam after about 7 or 8. And it really pushes people to be creative. Like some people might not have picked up a pen since it's college or university. So it's just a good way, like I said, mixing the intensity levels, getting people familiar with drawing. Like you don't want people to like run straight into paper prototyping and they're not really used to that way of working. So it's just a nice way just to get people working, have a bit of fun and being creative in the process. There's a few different ones for those that probably worked with before, you probably would have recognized this, called Squiggle Birds. It's a similar process to the basic shapes, like literally just getting participants to just literally just go mental on a bit of paper, scribble, let out any frustrations, and then converting them into a bird. So like you can see here, I've kind of got the step-by-step in terms of adding a beak, like adding legs, adding some wings. And again, it just gets people drawing, comfortable with pen and paper and breaks the ice. And then there's one final one that I like to do, and most agile coaches probably have this in their repertoire anyway, called alternative uses. So I get people to talk about a particular household object, and we can have a crack at this at the end if we've got time, and just think about, well, okay, what other uses are there for a brick? So we've got people talking about bird feeders, or maybe it's a nutcracker, or maybe you use it as a friend if you're very lonely during maybe the global pandemic, maybe. So yeah, some good visual exercises there that hopefully you can, if you've not used anything else, you can use these in your design sprints. They work perfectly for in-person days, which I'm doing today at MadeTech. They work perfect for retrospective warm-ups. Like you can use these for anywhere. So they're my free sort of go-tos and sort of trade secrets, I guess. And they warm people up perfectly for this, right? This is when the fun happens and the magic happens in a remote design sprint. So I've just come back for lunch. I've got everyone drawing, got people comfortable writing with pen and paper. And this is where we start our paper prototyping. So we can really get crazy with crazy eights. So the idea is taking a sheet of paper and folding that 3 times, and you'll get a lovely sort of image that you can see displayed here. You'll get 8 different quadrants. And the idea is that participants draw an idea to the problem we've already defined in that morning. And there's 2 ways of doing it. They can either take that problem and iterate it over the subsequent 7 minutes, an idea per frame. Or what I quite like them to do is, iterate it to the point where you've run out and maybe come up with different ideas. So you don't have to limit yourself. And something that I feel I'm quite creative, I haven't seen many other people use this. I'm a big advocate of reverse thinking and reverse brainstorming. And like I said, just changing the way that I facilitate, just so that it's not mentally taxing on people. Or what I typically find is maybe engineers, not picking on a particular capability, but maybe they run out of steam after 3 or 4 particular ideas. And I don't want people just sitting there staring at me for the next 4 minutes. So what I'd encourage them to do is something I've termed either weights. So there's 2 ways I facilitate this. I either get those people that are just, no, I haven't got any ideas. Sorry, Steve. Okay, great. Go huddle together, and I want you to come up with the worst possible solution to that idea. Right, how can we make the Net Office career site the worst possible thing? So it could be like it's not accessible, maybe we overwhelm users, maybe we make it just so slow people want to just go to civil service jobs, for instance, instead. So getting people to build on that, or you can just get people to work independently and just crack on. And why I quite like this, firstly, it just keeps people engaged, keeps the momentum moving in the right direction. It's really good for problem solving and swapping from problem solving to problem creating. And I'd say probably every design sprint I've done, when you come up with, right, this is a really good solution, normally it's the engineers going, well, this is going to be an absolute nightmare to implement. And sometimes that happens, right? It's just good to flag that nice and early. So, and that concludes day 1. So the last thing I get people to do before day 2 is take their best idea, take a look at the Miro board, make some notes, and they come up with something called a solution sketch. So they take their best ideas across the crazy 8s, and that's the last thing they do. I use a tool called Padlet, people who can just take a picture and upload it onto our virtual whiteboards, and that closes the day. So we've done a lot. So we've chosen a goal, we've done some paper prototyping, and we've got a solution we want to present. So day 2 kicks off, same format, morning session for 3 hours and an afternoon one. And it kicks off first with the art museum. And essentially what I get people to do is there's a frame on Miro, and everyone uploads their solution sketches. What I'd encourage people to do is, right, get your morning brew, put the kettle on, take a look, like just have a look at everyone's concepts. Like, what are the parallels between what they've drawn? Is there any bits that are similar? Is there any Alan Partridge aha moments? I like to refer to them. It only takes about 5 minutes. So it's a nice, easy introduction into day 2, especially because day 1's quite intense. And then your facilitator, and I quite like to have multiple people, even as someone has done 20, 30 different design sprints across a 15-year career, it's tiring. So as long as, like, I might facilitate the session, but have someone that's capturing the key concepts on your virtual whiteboard so you can refer back to. So that's what speed critique is. I normally put a timer on, so just limit it to 2 minutes. Otherwise, either people take 10 seconds and speak so quickly that it's just gone over your head, or they'll take 35 minutes talking about how proud they are of their particular concept, which is awesome, also awesome, but conscious of time and keeping people's energies high. So we'll look at something like this. You can see in the background, I've got a nice space where people can showcase their Louvre artwork in Miro in this particular example. So the next step is something called a heat map vote. So this is the way that I do it. I just create a load of different icons or filled in outlines of red circles, and people can vote. They get unlimited, so it's not like a retrospective, for instance, where you limit people to 3 or 4 votes. They can use as many as they wish. They can vote on their own concepts. And what I quite like is when you zoom out, similar to the service map, when we're deciding more what problem statements and how micros we're going to tackle, you've got a nice cluster that should hopefully inform what has the most potential to fulfill the design sprint need and tie back into our user needs. So this is a really good example. Like, we've got things like chatbots here, we've got lots of visuals, we've got video, we've got accessible videos, making sure transcripts available, which is super important. And that pretty much is most of the morning taken by talking about those concepts and voting. But we have a really, really important task, and you probably heard me refer to the decider earlier in the day. So I've worked on a few design sprints where there's a service owner, product manager, product owner. So someone needs to be a decider. There's one green dot, so everyone breaks for a cup of tea, and we give that decider 5-10 minutes to place their green dot on the concept they want to move forward into storyboarding and prototyping. And it was kind of something like that. Again, I don't kind of go by the book. Like, if people see there's potential in different ideas, or like, I like the top half of this one, and I think it would stitch really well with the second half of that one. Do it, like, you don't want to be a scrum mummy or someone that really kind of goes by the book. So I find it's quite nice just to give people, or give that decider, the flexibility. If they're really struggling, maybe there's potential in 2 different ideas and combining them. But you do still have to be quite strict. Like, we've got 2 or 3 days. We're not going to be able to prototype something end to end. So yeah, let them deal with the pressure. So that's what they're there for. Like I said, so that's the super vote. It's important to have coffee breaks. We also, something I quite liked that one of my other facilitators use. So normally when I introduce people back from lunch or a break or from a day, we were using Mentimeter, and he'd have things like, excuse me, what shirt colour is Steve wearing, or like, how many circles did we have to draw on day 1, or when we were doing that visual design thinking warm up, did we squiggle birds cat? And it just got people to recap the day, or for anyone that couldn't make it, they kind of had that sort of recap just from our social time. So that was quite a good sort of like in between exercise. So I think at that point, once the designers made their decision, this is probably the most trickiest part on a remote design sprint. So like, if you were doing the Google benching method, you're still on day 3.5. So we've almost like saved a day, all the stakeholders are finished at this point. You don't need them because this is up to the team to go, okay, well, this is the concept we want. Here's the design sprint. What can we realistically prototype and mock up to test with our users? And it's probably the most trickiest bit, but most people aren't familiar with that. And it's super tricky when you're not sort of crowdsourcing visuals and producing comic strip type storyboards, which is a lot easier in person. Because the way that I do it, there's a brilliant TED talk I recommend you to kind of go away and have a look. It's only about 8 minutes long by Ted Wuchek, and it's how to draw toast. And people probably think, oh, well, what's bread and butter associated with remote design sprint? But it turns out it's quite a lot. It's probably like one of the recipes to my success. I can't stop with bread puns now, apologies. And what is so good is, again, it gets people drawing, which they're going to be doing again, and it gets them thinking in a linear or sequential rather than linear process. So like if I've asked people how to draw toast, like, this was my one, for instance, like painting the bread, put it in the toaster, get a plate, put a topping on. But you'll find that people think a lot differently. So like maybe you've got students that's just, take it out of the freezer, like defrost it, put it over open fire. You get engineers drawing the mechanics of a toaster. You get all sorts. You get like BAs doing the sort of like, extracting the wheat and the sort of logistics and how Morrison's get their bread stacked, So the important thing that Ted Wuchek talks about is reducing the number of nodes. So ideally it's between 6 and 9, and nodes in this concept is the interaction, user touch points. So ideally you want 6 to 9 ways of doing that. You don't want to overcomplicate something. Like there's part of our service manual in government. It's about keeping things simple and accessible. So this is just a really good exercise just to get people warmed up for drawing, but also a really good lesson in let's keep it simple and keep it aligned. Like you don't need all the background noise or the sort of like the bookshelf ends of that particular process. So go away and have a look at it. It's brilliant and it's good fun as well. So from that point, so once you've done the how to draw toast, you literally just get a load of post-it notes on a Miro board as you go 1, 2 to 9, and what are the different things that we want to map out. And I'm quite strict on that. I could just show you a quick example what it looks like, which you can see here. So I've just got high-level post-it notes. The team then put it in going, okay, well, what I tend to encourage people to do is, what's the starting point? What's the end point? There's the bookends, and then work inwards. It's a lot easier. That's kind of what it looks like, and it doesn't require people to, just go off tangent. And another way that you could potentially do it if you've got a couple of facilitators is splitting the room. So you could almost A/B test your sequential storyboard for what you want to prototype. So you could say, well, team A and team B, here's how they differ. Here's the one we like most. Maybe we can combine them, similar to what we did with that green decider vote. So that's a good way of doing it. So essentially, by the end of day 2, we've now shared all the solutions. We've voted on them. Decided the one that we want to take forward, the most potential, and we know the user path that we want to map out. So it's really important to have some form of collaborative tool. So some MateTech use Figma. Met Office in particular use Sketch and Envision. I think it was the same at DWP where I done quite a lot of these as well. But you need something like, you could potentially use paper and pen. It's not the end of the world, but I think it does work quite well if when you're testing with users, you've got something that is sort of clickable. And that's pretty much what day 3 is. Like, not all of the team need to do that, but your user-centric design folk should have a clear afternoon, and that's really key. But they've got the whole day to be able to do that. And what I like to encourage them to do is be on an open Zoom call or Google Meet or Microsoft Teams, whatever technology you're using, just so they can kind of recapture that in-person collaboration. And I like to eavesdrop on that. So it might be people going, oh, I'm not quite sure what the policy is on that. And it's like, cool, don't let that block you. I'll go find out. And it just enables the team to work together. But if you're a delivery manager, scrum master, coach, it just gives you that opportunity to just have a sneak on the progress. Like maybe you can invite stakeholders to come have a look on where you're at. So they can provide feedback throughout. And most importantly, you can help unblock progress if there's any issues that come along. And day 4, this is the fun stuff, right? So I'm just going to clear my throat quickly. So it kind of comes back to the preparation before, really. So the week before, when I'm lining up my stakeholders and subject matter experts for that first moderated Q&A panel, you don't really want your user researcher or research team doing user recruitment whilst the team are prototyping. That individual wants to be able to input on those designs. They want to be able to create discussion guides. And maybe in most examples I work in, recruitment can take anywhere between 1 to 3 weeks. So you got to have a good idea of where your design sprint's heading beforehand to enable you to be able to test on the Thursday or day 4, depending if you don't kick it up on the Monday. So we produce the discussion guides on day 3, maybe surveys, and then we have moderated sort of user labs all day Thursday. And then the thing that I'd really like to encourage is that research to team support. So it doesn't mean that, because the user researchers carrying out these sessions, the engineers go back to their, working on their Jira backlog. So I like to get people involved in research, like helping to prioritize research questions, helping with the synthesis, like contributing to discussion guides, and really just supporting their team. So it's a really good way just to, one of my big pet peeves is, our UCD team, it's actually another one big team. It's a really good opportunity to embed that if you do see those anti-patterns. And then in this example with the mess office, we took these how might we statements and we produced a prototype within 4 days, and we tested it with 12 users. So it was in Figma. And then the next steps for us was digesting that feedback and then producing something that was a bit more interactive, where rather than clickable, where people could just type data in and seeing their reaction from that. And then from there, you can do story breakdown and put them into your sprint and product backlogs. So super, super cool, really, really lean. And then here's some of the tools that I've used. So we used Figma, we used Slack, so I've been able to set up a sort of like private Slack channel where the team can communicate and be able to share progress with stakeholders that might not be able to attend the session. So being able to say, hey, this is recorded, come have a look, or here's the progress. Having a whiteboard so that we can do all that affinity sorting and share our visuals. Like we use Miro, but there's brilliant ones out there with Miro or FigJam or any other equivalents. Using Trello to capture work. And I alluded to Mentimeter earlier to use for polls or to recap the day's events. And then really one of my main sort of tips and tricks, especially because a lot of stuff requires people drawing in isolation, there's a tool called Padlet. So I could just share a QR code. People can take a picture with their phone, scan the QR code, and upload their visuals, and people can react and communicate around that as well. So, I'm not promoting any of these particular tools. There's lots of good equivalents, but yeah, that's a good start for 10. I also like to set the ground rules for the starting point, especially for people that haven't particularly worked in this way before, especially if people are used to hybrid or in-person working. And you've probably seen a pattern here. So I called it worst meeting ever. So like, and it's using that reverse brain thinking technique again. So like, how could I make this the worst webinar ever? How could I make this the worst design sprint? And getting participants to come up with, like if you talk over one another, if I'm doing work in the background, like if I have my camera off, if I don't use the mute button, whatever those might be, let the team generate them and hold one another accountable and keep them committed. So it's just a different way of facilitating something in terms of meeting rules, which is a bit boring, so which is good. Something I like to contribute to those kind of like team charters and ways of working is this is something my contribution, and I hate the word no or no but. So it's really important to promote the emphasis of appreciating everyone's contribution. We're all got an equal voice. We're all in this together. Now, I don't want to hear no but. We're going to hear yes and. So building on each other's ideas. And I've alluded to this to a little bit, but that's how you get that psychological safety, the trust, the collaboration. So I think setting that out at the start and holding people accountable and having people, you know, you can refer back to it as a facilitator. Guys, did you like this is what we agreed? Like, do we want to iterate this? It's, you know, even if I don't need it, it's just something I would always do, whether I'm doing a retrospective, roadmap, design sprint, they're really useful. Sometimes things do go off tangent. So I think having a UX parking lot is super important, or some people might have heard that as an icebox. So again, as a facilitator, it's almost a nice way to shut people down if they are going off topic. Go, right, thank you very much. Really welcome the contribution. We're going to come back to that shortly. And like you can even use lanes, which I've been introduced to recently. So maybe it's the fast lane. This is something that needs to be picked up urgently before we moved on. Or maybe it's the slow lane. You know, I've just got a question. It's like, what time are we breaking for lunch? We can come back to that in 20 minutes rather than disrupting the whole conversation. So having a parking lot or somewhere where people can jot down thoughts, or as a facilitator, somewhere where you can kind of point people towards and keep the conversation on track is super, super useful. And yeah, like I said, there's a lot of visuals. I like drawing, and hopefully, well, there's a lot of sort of studies in Waterloo where people say that 85% of drawn content is much more memorable compared to 10% written and 5% spoken, right? And considering this is a webinar where I'm speaking a lot, hopefully some of these land well into the future. Here's my sort of like top sort of 5. So ABC, so quite easy to remember. So always be capturing. There's going to be a lot of maybe use breakout rooms. Like I said, like mixing up the facilitation. Maybe use liberating structures like 1, 2, 4, or however you do it. You don't want to lose all these nuggets of wisdom, all these conversations. Like always be capturing, or having a scribe or different facilitators that can support you. Super important, because you don't want to lose track of something that's just absolutely brilliant, or that Alan Partridge aha moment. It's really important to have a retro at the end. So after I tested after day 4, you know, you don't want to lose the momentum. So it's really important to go, okay, what worked well, what didn't? Did we like the process? What would we do in the future? What do we do now? And read and prep. So I kind of alluded to a couple of sort of thought leaders in this space, particularly Jake Knapp, who's now at AJ and Smart. He's got some brilliant sort of video tutorials that are worth checking out. There's also his book he's written, Google Ventures, and there's a lot of Design Sprint 2.0 guidance that I've drawn a lot of inspiration for in the stuff I'm presenting to you today. So it's well worth checking out his content. And I've kind of already alluded to this, but I'm going to emphasize it again. Plan your sprint schedule. Like, you can't just rock up on the Monday and expect a load of stakeholders to have 3 hours out their diary at short notice, or not having discussion guides ready, or not having a rough idea of the sort of sprint goal or the biggest problem areas. Like I said, like you might do some brilliant work on the Wednesday, day 3, and no one to test it with for 2 weeks. And then maybe something else comes up, so you lose that momentum. And that's probably one of the biggest killers. And then again, just to re-emphasize again, multiple facilitators. I find it exhausting. I've done a lot of them. You know, there's no shame having different people, different voices, people to keep an eye on different breakout rooms. And it's a really good learning opportunity. And then the last one, again, it's a team sport. We're not going to create silos. So getting people involved in prototyping and design work, and in actually coordinating and observing the research is equally important. That's kind of like the conclusion, really. But I just want to kind of call out some of the challenges I've kind of encountered. And there is a few, and I've kind of alluded to some of these in terms of meeting fatigue. Like, no one really wants to spend even 4 or 5 hours at best staring at a screen all day. Some people like it and draw energy from it, probably not many. So like, how are you going to deal with that? And I think I've tried to cover that in terms of, lots of games, lots of drawing, lots of facilitators. Changing the intensity is really important. You might have time zone differences. You might have people with different working patterns. You might have stakeholders that can't attend key parts and maybe feel left out. There's the usual technical challenges. So touch wood that hasn't happened on this call, where Wi-Fi goes down, or the meeting etiquette goes out the window. So there's definitely some challenges to factor in. But like I said, if you do your prep, always be prepared. Then you can kind of identify and eliminate some of these little bits and pieces. But overall, I think the successes and the benefits far outweigh the sort of negatives. So you get a lot of accessibility. You get a lot more people involved. So there might be, for instance, in my account, I work with about 60 people, all up and down the country. Like the logistics of getting every single one person in an innovation lab or in a design room or in a room with a whiteboard is pretty tricky. So that's really good, just being able to be efficient and collaborative. And speaking on the work that I do, to put really critical services that support vulnerable people and make a big impact on society. I think the general public would be quite proud to know that things can go from an idea to in development within a week, ideally. So yeah, hopefully have a similar level of success. Like I'm not going to open up questions quite yet. I just want to kind of give you a flavour of what the sort of boards look like very quickly, if my Zoom wants to get out of the way. Excellent. So here's the blank Miro board. So we're going to send and circulate this Miroverse template to everyone. It's just currently pending approval, but just gives you a flavour of everything you've seen in the slide deck. How does it look like? So obviously here's the morning, you've got Ask the Experts, you're defining your goal, you've got the lightning demo, you've got the UX car park, you've got all of the facilitation instructions in terms of how to do crazy eights and either weights if you wish to use that. You've got space for the art museum, speed critique, super vote, how to draw toast that were covered, storyboard. And obviously day 3, like I said, it's just an open call like you're in here, prototype away. And then the thing obviously I haven't included on this is the discussion guides and maybe your research schedule. Obviously you can put that in yourselves. So I'll just give you a quick flavour of kind of what our sort of prototype look like. So I spoke a little bit around, nodes, having 6 to 9 of them. But this is something that we produce within 10 days. You can see here there's something like 40 different screens for the Met Office careers site. I might show you the whole thing, but we mocked this up in Figma in 1 day. So like just super, there's absolute ton of sort of areas in which people can filter jobs and be able to check all the content. We've done some A/B testing on different content and the way that we presented information. We saw how comprehensive that was in there. And this is just a little flavour of kind of what it looked like in practice. So I won't zoom in and show you lots of sort of data, but just gives you that perspective and similar to capturing research notes, like having that in a nice space and doing that as a team. So that's sort of my tips and tricks. And I kind of want to circle back just to do a little bit of visual thinking, unless there's any sort of questions in the chat. Anna, how am I doing for time?
So we have about 20 minutes. There's a few questions that came in throughout. I don't know, do you want to go through what you have to say first, or do you want to go questions first?
Let me just share my... Yeah, let's do some questions. Go on, Anna.
Okay, just quickly. So we have Rachel. When lived experience is equally valued in service co-design, how would you frame the Ask the Expert? Because that effectively would be everyone there as the expert. And Rachel is always saying she may have answered their own question, but it would be good to have new and fresh perspectives.
Yeah, so it all kind of comes in the prep. So for instance, the careers site and the Met Office, for example, like we really wanted to target a lot of the people that had a lot of say in the development of that. So like, like new directors, like we wanted to have people like HR partners, we wanted to have like talent acquisition. So I think it's probably up to the prep to decide, okay, well, who's available first? Like, what are the different user personas and archetypes that I really want to be able to hear from and draw insight from? But because those sessions are moderated and can even be up to about 5-6 minutes, you know, there's no harm getting one user persona, or sorry, one person per each persona, like up to 6. That still leaves plenty of time to affinity sort and decide a goal. So like, yeah, like everyone could be an expert, but I think having a good idea of where your design sprint's heading beforehand, that enables you to target the right audience to kick it off, because that's the most important bit. But also start your user recruitment. Okay, well, who are we likely to test with? Because if we start that on Wednesday, we're probably not going to test on the Thursday, which means we lose all that momentum. I hope that's answered your question.
Thank you. Let us know, Rachel, if not, and we'll go back. We also have Harry. Let me just go back to that question quickly, if I can find it. So Harry asked, is the decider agreed prior to the design sprint starting, or are they selected on day one? And have you ever had any challenges with getting agreement?
Yeah, so I have had challenges, you know, especially like if you've got, well, I guess by the books, right, you've got one product owner. And in government, you've probably got a lot of people like BAs that are proxy product managers. You've got product managers, you've got product owners, you've got service owners. So I would ideally I've tackled that beforehand, but you know, on the example where I kind of learned from my own mistake is that when people broke for the coffee break, and it was like, oh, who is the decider? So like, and the way that I kind of worked around that on that example was, you got two green dots still, or one green dot rather. Might give you 2. Like if you're really struggling, make it work. Argue amongst yourself. You've got an hour and 15 minutes till everyone comes back, and they're going to expect a decision. And that worked, but yeah, I don't like to be caught off guard when facilitating. So normally what I would do the week before, when I'm lining up the users, obviously working very closely with those individuals anyway to try and shape the sprint goals, work on the service map. I would then coach them and also the team on what design sprint is. Like, what does it look like? What involvement is it? Because people are nervous about it if you've never done it before and you're expected to create this like crazy innovative prototype. So yeah, it's really important to do that before. But if you do forget, give them the one vote, let them work it out themselves.
Thank you. And I think you touched on that a bit, but Janine also asked, as part of the preparation, do you get the commitment from the stakeholders for availability for the design sprint beforehand?
Yeah, so the perfect thing, I didn't really touch on this, like one of the big benefits of the design sprint is they don't necessarily have to be there. If you need them, then they can't be there. There is a workaround. You can do a recorded Q&A session with them the day before, like the week before, 2 weeks before. So they can still be there and say what they need, and the team can still capture those how might be statements. Like if they can't attend the call where we're prototyping, you can send them the screen recording. You can send them, you know, like they can send individuals to pass that feedback along. You can invite them to your Slack, to your Trello board, so they can see the progress. So yes, it's good to have them involved, but it's not the end of the world, because if, unlike being in a meeting room, I was saying that even in the physical design sprint, you could do that. But yeah, that's worked quite well, just being like, actually, I really need your input. Let's just do that Q&A the week before. I hope that helps.
Yeah, let us know. Thank you. Another question. So Rachel said, I have to work in a time lag between discovery plus defined sprints and the development prototype phase. How would you deal with that? As Rachel finds it reduced momentum and sometimes enthusiasm.
Yeah, let me just read that just so I can understand that bit. Yeah, so normally I probably wouldn't do a design sprint in a discovery phase, like purely because you're probably touching more in alpha. So for those that are unfamiliar with government life cycles, discovery is all about identifying user needs. Alpha is kind of where this touches on more on rapid prototyping, testing your biggest and riskiest assumptions, and then beta, private and public, where you're actively developing and subsequently live production. So yeah, I probably wouldn't do this in a discovery. I think it's much more important to understand the overarching user needs, which is kind of what we've done on this. We've done the discovery on my most recent one on the Met Office careers site, or what the problem areas, what the bottlenecks, who else is working in this space, what's the existing supplier, what's the arrangements, is there a need to move into prototyping? Yes. So I think like choosing it at the appropriate time is really important. I think if you're battling this with year end or juggling multiple initiatives, or I think even at some of the things I've probably done wrong in the past, maybe not necessarily myself, but like if you do a design sprint and then move on to the next feature or problem statement the next week, it just makes the whole prior work pointless because you've lost that momentum. So I haven't personally encountered the same problem, but I think if you choose the right time, people are empowered to get things done quickly and they enjoy it.
Thank you. Francesco asked, how long did it take to create a board like the one you showed us at the end?
Oh, go on, Frankie. Yeah, good power mind. Nice to hear from you, Frankie. I hope you're still there. So that probably takes me, depends. I like to create things bespoke, right? Like, so I create things bespoke to the clients I work with just to make it appropriate. And it probably takes me a day, about 6-7 hours to create them. Right, but yeah, oh, you are there, Frank. I can see you clapping along. Yeah, it's probably about 6-7 hours. Just it's like, imagine like you're nervous, you're anxious, you've never done a design sprint before, and someone eases you in and gone, look, I've done this before, but also I've made this bespoke just for you. Like it's all for you, and making it appropriate and just really setting the scene and being like, let's be innovative. Like this is the sort of standard, and I don't know, it just makes people feel welcomed and this has been thought about. So it would normally take me a day, but doesn't need it. It's probably more for my comfort level and flexing my drawing skills, which I'm pretty bad at doing. So, yeah, there's brilliant like my templates will be on the Miroverse. Like all of AJN's smart stuff is on the Miroverse. I think there's stuff on Session app. I think there's mural templates. So like you could literally just click use template and off you go. So, but for me personally, it probably takes me a day prep. Cheers, Frankie.
Thank you. So there's a couple more questions. We have 10 more minutes, so I'll ask those. After you've finished the design sprint and built the prototype, who then owns and is accountable for next steps, prioritization and development? Daryl asked.
Yeah, it's a really good question, Daryl. So typically I would say it's the sort of product manager, product owner we're working with. And I think that's where the coaching happens before, right? Like my biggest pitfalls is that individual then says, oh, great work, everyone. We're going to work on this now. And you're like, oh, that sucks. That's not great. But I still think it's a team effort. But typically it's that individual to say, great work. But I do try to drive that myself, coach and work with that individual. So I think as soon as that week's wrapped up, going back to my tips, like retrospective, what worked well, what do we want to take forward? I showed you a sneak peek at that clickable prototype. But the key thing for us was we really want to test an interactive one. And luckily in government, we've got a prototyping kit that's fully accessible. It's got all common components and patterns. And it was just as easy to mock up something that people can actually type real data into and actually replicate what this service will really look and feel like, rather than just essentially just images that kind of link to one another. So those were the sort of next steps. But I think it's really important to work with whoever's making that decision. It's normally a product owner, manager, to say, this is really what's going to happen next week. And that's where the fun happens, right? Where you go, right, here's the retro, here's the synthesis and analysis of all of the research. Like we don't just want to make something interactive that's crap. Like what are the improvements we want to make and what tooling do we want to make for that? And if that tests well, we can then do a story breakdown and it feeds into the backlogs. But I guess that's the pros and cons, is just working with that person, really. Cheers, Darren.
Thank you. So I think the last one I have is, how do you get users in to test a prototype so quickly on day 4?
Perfect. Yeah. So I kind of alluded to this a little bit throughout, really. So like you can't start that recruitment on the Wednesday when people are prototyping. Like you've got to have a good sense, or at least a good sense of the direction the week before, or even the week before that. So like take the Met Office careers site, for instance, there's different areas we could have tested and mocked up, but we knew we were looking for job searchers, right? Or if I was in Universal Credit in DWP, like we're looking for case managers, like job center people, operations. So like if you've got a good sense of this is kind of the direction we're going to go in. You can start creating placeholders and working with users a week or 2 weeks so things are lined up for Thursday. And that's quite scary, right? Because the day before, you don't have anything to test other than some random sketches. So yeah, that's where always be prepared and start your stakeholder engagement beforehand, sketch up your service maps beforehand, get a good idea from your decider, your product manager, what direction you're moving in. But yeah, you can't start recruitment the day before, because that researcher needs to produce the discussion guides. They need to be involved in the collaborative sort of creation of those prototypes. I like to do that together. So yeah, that's how I do that. Otherwise, you're going to lose all that momentum if you're not testing for another month.
Thanks. If anyone has any other questions that want to ask verbally or put in the chat, feel free. Loads of love for you, Stephen, in the chat. Thank you for the session. So if you want to have a look, it's quite great for you to read. Do you want to go through what you were going through earlier quickly?
Yeah, let's do a little drawing, right? So I think some of you would have saw the visual thinking exercises I shared. So it'd be awesome if you want to draw along with me. And hopefully, can you see my screen, Anna? It's a bit lucky. There you go.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
Do you want to move the camera to the side?
I will try. Doesn't seem to like it on my iPad, Anna. So I'm going to leave it there just because I'm conscious of time. So yeah, if you've got a pen and paper, like you don't have. I'm flexing. I'm sorry. I did pre-warn you, so I've got my iPad with me, but pen and paper is just as sufficient. Like I said, this is my go-to, 30 circles. You can do it with different shapes, but I really like to be able to push myself and other people to be able to go, okay, well, fill your paper with these shapes and then converting them into an image. So feel free to draw along with me, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what you kind of come up with if you want to send them to the Made Tech email that responded. So like, for instance, this could be an apple. So super simple visuals, like everyone can draw. There you go. That's my apple. Maybe I've got a sort of little tomato here. You know, maybe I've got a planet over here. But just, even if you're struggling to think of something, I just find, and this is what I encourage people to do during the Crazy Eights, is just start drawing. I think as soon as you start hitting pen to paper, it just gets so much easier, like rather than just starting at a sort of blank page, really. And like, you know, I can sort of draw maybe a balloon. So it's just literally just a really simple triangle, maybe a bomb, which is sort of a metaphor for risk or danger, maybe. Yeah, maybe this is going to be a magnifying glass. I say you don't have to be a visual facilitator or a graphic recorder. Like every one of you can write and draw, and it's just super simple. And it's just a brilliant warm up in terms of processing a different part of your brain and just getting a bit creative. So yeah, like feel free to finish that off. And then there's just one other exercise which I can show you. So this is the Squiggle Birds. So just show you what that kind of looks like quickly. There we go. It's a little bit laggy on my side. So get another sheet of paper or turn it around. And it's just super simple. Like this, like I said, you can just sort of let out any frustrations. There you go. Help if I have the layer turned on. Obviously, you've probably got a bit more space than me. And then what I like to do is just choose a different color. And like I said, you're looking for a beak, some wings, and maybe some legs. So, you know, maybe this is my sort of swan's head over here. There's my beak. You know, maybe my body's over here. Now I've got like a nice wing shape over there. And there's my sort of talons. So like, just get creative with it and just like, you know, what can you see in these visuals? Like sometimes some squiggles are harder than others to sort of produce. There you go. Maybe this is like a sort of cockatoo with a big bird here. There you go. But again, just gets people comfortable drawing and sort of sharing it, and it's just a really nice sort of icebreaker to go into crazy eights and storyboarding. So that's kind of what it can look like in practice. We've spent ages talking about that. I'm conscious I've got 3 minutes left. Is there any final questions, Anna?
Not that I can see. Does anyone have any?
Oh, there's one tool from Leon. So yeah, Frankie, you're spot on. So my sort of visual setup, for anyone interested, so all of my slides, I should say, are all completely hand drawn and handwritten. I use an iPad Pro, so that's my setup. I use an Apple stylus, and I use Procreate, that you quite rightly point out, Frankie. It's an iOS only app, costs £10. Brilliant. I do all my visuals on there, and I like drawing big non-flip chart, but yeah, as you can see, I could take those visual assets, put them into Miro, put them into Google Slides, put them on LinkedIn. Super simple.
Perfect, thank you. Anyone else has any questions? Feel free to raise your hand or mention it on the chat. Someone's saying there's a squiggle game on Bing. Parental alert.
There's a couple of brilliant ones. There's a Google machine learning. I'm trying to think what it's called now. Google Draw. How can I not forget that? So I need my lunch, obviously. And yeah, it gives you prompts. And again, you could use it as we've got 1 minute left. I'll just show you what these look like super quickly, just in case anyone else wants to get nerdy. So Google Draw is one of them, and it's super. There you go, Quick Draw by Google. So again, you could do this in a remote design sprint, and it'll give you a prompt when it decides to load. Baseball, and I don't know what baseball looks like. Oh, there you go, I got it. And they'll give you different prompts, and you've got to try and get it quickly. And then if there's anyone going, oh, I can't draw, well, I don't know I don't know how you do it, Steve. Auto draw is brilliant. I don't use it, I promise, but it's very good. So you click on the auto draw tab, and maybe let's do the 30 circle exercise, right? And it'll start giving me prompts up here. So maybe I want to draw that apple. There you go. And it goes, oh, Steve, you're trying to draw that. Select it, copy and paste it into your Miro, into your presentations. So not that you all need it. I'm sure you're all beautiful visual thinkers, but there's 2 final tips and tricks from me.
Lovely. Thank you very much. That was really good. Thank you, Stephen. And thanks everyone for joining. We're out of time now. If there's any questions, let us know. We'll send you an email after with the recording and a link for some feedback as well. Be great to hear what you thought of the session. And yeah, thanks everyone and have a great day.
Thank you all. It's a pleasure to see you. Cheers, Anna.
Great. Thank you.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.